the Candid candidate conversations. I really do have to fix the kerning on that because it's going to irritate me between the A and the T. But anyway, I'm joined this week by Melissa Smith, Zoe Zephyr, Skylar Williams, and Carol Borner, which I am super excited about. And of course, I just saw everybody's tweets go out because Melissa's connected on Twitter and Zoe's connected on Twitter. And so my Twitter is like 92 videos right now. It's super great. Oh, and Sterling is joining us. Hey, Sterling.
Hey, Kev.
The timing is impeccable because we just went live. The question that I was actually asked before this is, why did I start this? And I was like, because it's important. That's the most important reason about why I started this, is because we need to have these conversations. It's absolutely something that we need to be doing. And if you cannot get in front of the people to talk to them because, we all just don't have that much time. Our districts are huge. There's hundreds of thousands of people that we need to talk to. This is a fast, easy way to get about some deeper topics that we don't have a chance to talk to people in person about, where they can ask these questions. So that's why we started this. So welcome to the conversation. I'm going to start off with one. Let's just go with the 800-pound gorilla in the room, whose ever device that was. Please stop that.
I don't have my phone.
The recent tragedy in Uvalde has brought a familiar conversation back to the forefront of discourse: the role of police in public schools. Following that botched police response in Uvalde that proved deadlier than it was helpful, what would the candidates say to those who suggest that more armed security in elementary schools is a good way to protect children? We're diving right into the deep end right off the bat, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to take the punch on this one, and I'm going to go, we don't need more guns. We don't need more police in schools. And schools do not need to be treated as prisons. The whole, we just need to be able to lock the doors. The doors had locks. The school probably didn't have a good air conditioning system, and that's why the door got opened. But more importantly, the kids are not prisoners. They don't need to be locked up for school days. So what we need to do is get rid of assault rifles that are easily accessible by people that are angry. And this would not be a problem. That's why it is not a problem in other countries. And I know that people, the gun rights advocates that are out there, the ammosexuals that are out there, are going to be upset that that is the truth. But we have evidence that that is the truth, because from 94 until 2003, we had an assault rifle ban. And that's not what the AR and AR-15 stands for. I know, I got it. Shut up. It is because we had the automatic loading firing guns of that type were restricted. We reduced the amount of mass murders that happened by a huge amount. It was like 74%. And then as soon as that ban expired in 94, it went up 250% plus. So I will take that one. Anybody else want to jump in?
So, interestingly, I am a pacifist, and one of the great inspirations for that philosophy was Jeanette Rankin, who is the sole vote against entering World War I, for better or worse, and
World War II,
and World War II, yes. So I feel like children deserve to live safely everywhere, not just in school. And making schools more secure, however that may look, is not protecting children, really. It's protecting the people who are in charge of the children that day during those hours. But making schools more secure is not going to solve the problem of gun violence. And after spending a weekend here in Billings Heights, listening to sirens from morning to evening, all weekend long, schools are not the only place that we need to deal with gun violence. So there you go.
Anybody just jump in? I can jump in?
Yeah, jump in.
Yeah, so I don't see the merit into, whether it's one officer, 2 officers, 5 officers, 19 officers, there's always going to be that problem that they don't have the obligation to go and save your life, to save the lives of kids. There was a mother that's been going viral everywhere on TikTok, Twitter. I don't know her first name, but her last name is Gomez. Ms. Gomez drove 2 hours to the school got arrested by marshals, got released by the officers, jumped the fence, ran in, not only saved her 2 kids, but that entire classroom. And so when you see not only in Uvalde, but also in Parkland, that officer was afraid for his life. He didn't go in and save those kids. What is the point of having these cops there if they do not act? You can have 20 more cops in there, and this is going to be the same situation next time. It's very hard. I myself own guns. I know there's a lot of pro Second Amendment people here in Montana, but you have to understand that, yes, under the Constitution, we have the right to bear arms, but under the Declaration of Independence, we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So where do we draw the line from one and the other? I don't understand how we can be the only major country that this still happens in. This is a uniquely American problem. You look at Sweden, Finland, they have this almost the same gun ownership rates as the United States, and they don't have mass shootings. I think Sweden's last mass shooting was 2001. It just doesn't happen. We have to look at these countries and learn from these countries and implement better policies. That's what I think we should absolutely be doing.
Good. Zoe, want to chime in?
I think the answer to the question is no, you don't need more cops in schools. I think you hit the nail on the head there. Kev, for me, the hard part is we're obviously talking about it all day, but I feel like I was just talking about Buffalo, and Parkland feels recent as well, and Pulse, and it just, don't have, there is, obviously, we can sit here and say something needs to be done, and that's true. This is one of the things that feels like the hardest fight to move ground on at all. It feels like there are so many, the 2A folks have their heels really dug in on this, and I, from a pragmatic side, I'm wondering, you put bills forward, but what can we do? And what can we as communities do? And I don't have an answer to that, but the answer is sure as hell not cops in schools.
Yeah. One of the things that I would add to this, just because everybody's like, "Oh, well, you shouldn't be talking about that. It's too soon." I don't know that it's ever too soon since the 6 days since Uvalde, we have had another 76 Americans have died in mass shootings in the 6 days since then. That's just ridiculous, and at some point you have to realize that rights are not immutable and they are not infinite. My right to live my life the way I want to stops at the point where I take a car and run someone down. Yeah. It stops at the point where I have a gun that is left unattended that gets up in the hand of a child that mows people down. And that's the point that this has to be. It is about responsible gun ownership. And all of my friends that are on the edge of being the 2A people, they're very sort of pro-gun. They don't want any sort of restrictions on their lives. They're the ones who are responsible. They have gun safes. They have gun locks. They keep their ammo separate. They already do all the things that we would ask other people to do. And that's the thing that they don't often get, is that this is the requirement that we have to have. Also, there is absolutely no reason for someone to sell 300 rounds of ammo and 2 brand new guns to an 18-year-old and not have a red flag go up saying, "Hey, this might be a problem." That's just, and on some level that comes down to, how is it that bartenders would be charged with murder, but that ammo sales guy isn't? Mm-hmm. Because it was absolutely more reckless than, serving a bunch of extra Jell-O shots. So
the Patriot Act was passed 45 days after 9/11. So no, there's no such thing as too soon.
Now, if we could just get Russia's money out of politics, we could do this, but unfortunately we still have the NRA. So it sounds like we're all in agreement on that. So as you go into whichever house that you end up in, whether it's the state house or the U.S. house, I would hope that all of you are going to be pushing for not gun control, but gun reform, and things like, hey, if you're going to own more than 3 guns, you actually have to have liability insurance. If you're going to have more than 50 rounds of ammo, you have to have liability insurance for it. And if you don't have those things, that's a felony and you could lose your guns. And those are simple things for everybody to do. And I can guarantee you, once we involve the insurance companies in this, they're going to fix it.
Mhm.
So that's where that is. I don't have a lot to add to that because it is such a distressing topic, but it seems so clear cut to most everybody on our side of the aisle that this just has to be done. When you're faced with a bunch of people in the legislature that did, I mean, they passed the bill last year to let guns on campus, taking this, trying to strip the power out of the regents. We took them to court. We did what we could in the legislature. We fought for it. We all gave testimony on it, said it was a bad idea. And then they still passed it. The governor still signed it. We took them to court and we got it removed because that is not their place. And it is not a place for guns. I'm sorry. You do not need guns on a campus when you're dealing with kids whose hormones are out of line. And all of a sudden they're going to have access to a killing machine. And that's all guns are.
I saw this really nice saying online, and it was, if one kid was beating another kid with a stick, obviously I wouldn't blame the stick. I would blame the kid. But at the same time, I would take that stick away. And I was like, that is a very good way to put it. I appreciate that.
We all still have a right to a stick.
Yeah. And everybody else in the Second Amendment, there also is that part about well-regulated. We could have a whole thing about, you need to go to class, you need to pass safety forms, you have to have other things in place. Those could all be put in place. That would be part of that well-regulated that's part of the amendment as well.
Mhm.
So, I have another one that is a separate topic. Montana's DPHHS recently decided to reverse its decision to decline pandemic food assistance. Could that reversal be reasonably correlated with public outrage about the initial decision not to participate? I'm going to let you guys take this because I have thoughts, but I want to formulate them.
So I'm going to dive in and say yes.
Okay. Go ahead. Is that it?
So, and I remember reading more detail about why they decided to end the pandemic food assistance, and there was a lot of documentation required with providing that assistance that seemed really arduous, and I understood in a practical sense why they chose to do that. I still thought it was the wrong decision, but the way that they chose to not provide that assistance to all students then required a certain burden of paperwork of keeping track of who was getting it, who wasn't. I feel like they were setting themselves up to fail with that particular decision. And now I'm glad to see that they've turned around on it.
Great.
Just in time for school to be over.
Yeah, but there's still summer school.
Yes.
And a lot of kids still depend on those meals over the summer break too.
Yeah.
For sure. Zoe?
Yeah, I think there's no way around. I do think the amount of people who testified and pushed back against it certainly has an impact on the decision getting shifted. But ultimately, how much of that was from public pressure and how much of it was from, miraculous finding of one's moral compass, I don't know, but the result is good. And so we take it all the way.
Crazy things have happened.
Yeah, and so and DPHHS, I don't think has a not a track record of being great lately, but yeah, I do think this is obviously the right call, and whatever reason I'm glad they reversed course.
Yeah. Sterling?
So, Melissa, did you say there was of paperwork that they had to do to justify not using it?
They, in order to continue assistance with specific students, which is why they were able to do it over the pandemic, because it was for everybody and it was every day, and so that was a lot easier documentation wise. Now that everybody's back in the classroom, they decided that they were only going to, that not everybody qualified for that assistance. And so then they would have to keep track of every single student who was qualifying for that assistance, that they continued to qualify, and that they were actually getting those benefits. And it was really detailed and arduous, as opposed to just giving lunches to everybody because, kids got to eat.
So my guess is that they did it to avoid the paperwork as opposed to doing the right thing. So
Yes.
I'll let you go, Sterling.
Sorry, Sterling.
No, I think that's a good piece about government is trying to keep it simple for people. And I think that's a role that the legislator has is checking up on all the different government agencies and how they implement things. And to the extent they can keep it simple, like really, are they going to make them do all this documentation to exclude a few kids and save a tiny bit of money here when it's so important that you get the resources to the people who need it, especially we're talking about kids, like kids who need to eat, who will do better in school when they have access to programs and, worst case scenario, some kids whose parents can afford it get some free food. It's, I don't think there's much harm in that. And I think it's important, especially on these state programs, that you just keep them simple, that you're not creating all these extra administrative costs and bureaucracy. And so I'm glad that they're just going to hopefully deliver that to everybody.
Yep. Skylar, you got anything you want to add?
Yeah. A lot of this food, a lot of food assistance. I was on food assistance when I was in school. I was under state health insurance as well, Healthy Montana Kids. And that has been a great help, not only through school, but through my life. It ended when I turned 19, I believe. But a lot of this isn't even like we shouldn't have any hungry children, not only in school, but out of school in the United States, in Montana. Like we have all this money. Why the hell are we paying taxes if it's not feeding and housing our kids, our people? I don't understand. I don't understand why they would look at how to end this early, any excuse to end this early, whether it be paperwork, whether it be lack of moral compass. I think it was a great program. I think it still is a great program. And they should be looking at ways to expand this, not to end it early.
Yeah. One of the things that I find most ridiculous about it, if it is paperwork, that's the job. You're in government. Like literally the entire job of government is paperwork. It is, here is the things that are happening. Oh, we should fix them. Let's write new things for them to happen, publish it. That's it. That's the whole goal. It's not like the rest of it is, oh, nope, we get 23 people today and we put them in a circle and they're going to chant for 20 minutes in some Celtic language and that's how we're going to make the grass grow. That's not what they're doing. So for them to complain about paperwork is a little bit odd, but then the other side of it is, and I'm just going to tie it back to another thing that is just boggling my mind, and this is more related to me. Sorry, I'm taking the spotlight for a minute, but the internet is, we've got billions and billions of dollars in money that has been allocated for building the internet out, and we have the NTIA and FCC getting together, and they still can't get maps in place that actually show where it's been built. So they're putting, instead of like going, oh, well, we need a better way to do the maps and fixing that problem, instead they're making reporting more difficult on the companies that take money, which is making it more and more, it has to be a bigger and bigger company that gets any of this money because they're the only ones that are going to have the staff to do this sort of reporting, which is exactly what you don't want to do because bigger and bigger companies don't want to do service in small towns and in rural America, which is the whole point of the program. So to some extent, this is one of those times where it's like, oh, we have regulations that are out of control. And this is where you get a bunch of people on the right that are going, oh, well, government isn't working. No, this specific program of government isn't working because people have overthought their stuff. However, that does not mean government doesn't work. It means in this instance, it's not working. But if you want to break government, you elect somebody who hates government and thinks it's always broken because that is the best self-fulfilling prophecy you could ever come up with. So that's my take on it.
Well, I think it's just another way that they're trying to chip away at the public school system and make it less effective for the community.
Yeah. Let's defund the schools more and see if they work better. What? They
defund the schools and then they point about how lackluster the schools are. And it's like, well, you just take away 20% of the funding and expect them to do the same exact amount of work and get the same exact amount of results. It makes no sense to me.
Right? It's the worst. The worst. Let's see. Anybody else got anything else to add on that? Because DPHHS did something else recently that I'm going to add on because I want to ask that question. So we just raised her eyebrows in sort of a, oh, I'm going to make you mad? Good. Good. Like, this should bring rage levels to the point of, I have a pitchfork. Where's the building? So DPHHS did an emergency rule because this is somehow an emergency. I don't understand. Because they lost in court on fixing the gender markers for trans people. And instead of doing what the court told them to do, they decided to come up with this new idea that they can't do anything of the sort and have installed an emergency rule that literally stops them from following what the court said, which removes the court as a peer to the other two branches of government, which is a bad idea. Saying no to a judge seems like a choice you shouldn't make. But they did it. And in doing it, they have managed to piss off a bunch of people, including me. Zoe, I can imagine you might be angry as well. Melissa, sounds like you might be angry. I don't know if Skylar, Sterling, and Carol know about this, but I'm sure you've heard about it. What is your take on the actions of DPHHS in this particular instance?
Well,
Well, I can let people know because I'm gonna do what Kev did and like run the courts. I'll let other people go.
Okay, Carol, you want to take it first?
So So let me just say that this is just a broad comment about DPHHS. Is that when you bring the guy that destroyed the state program in Kansas in to run the department in Montana, you're out to destroy government, and I think that is the mission of Gianforte is to destroy the government, and I think it's ludicrous that that agency thinks they're more powerful than the court system. I just don't think that they, basic civics, obviously, so it makes me kind of scratch my head because sometimes I wonder if the public education system has failed Republican legislatures, that they don't know what basic civics are.
Well, a lot of them went to private school, and that definitely failed them.
There you go.
I think it's also a very dangerous. Sorry, I think it's always also a very dangerous precedent to set. To every time a court or anything rules against you, anything goes against you, you just change the rules. I don't think that is very healthy, not only for the state, but imagine if Congress did that. They just took all the power away from the courts and the executive branch, and they do everything. Like, oh, we got the court ruled against us, we'll just change this rule. I don't think that's very responsible, in government or not. I don't think this is a responsible way to handle anything.
Right. Sterling, Melissa?
Yeah, it just feels like they're just poking at trans people, hoping to get some publicity out of it for the real conservative right and the religious folks, and get them all fired up over by beating up on people who need help, who don't need any more people who are creating a harm in their life. I mean, it's just so obnoxious and gross.
To me, it sounded a lot like the Montana state government saying, I'm sorry, we can't have yellow lights on street traffic lights because yellow doesn't exist. Except it does, and it actually plays kind of a critical role in the whole movement of everything.
You've obviously not driven here in Helena, but between yellow lights and four-way stops, that may be where our problem lies, is that they don't know how to do any of this stuff. One of the things that, and Zoe, I will let you run the court in just a minute. One of the things that really bothers me about this is the whole concept of we're going to attack someone that we know doesn't have the resources to defend themselves because we don't think they have enough allies to stand up for them, to make it painful, and it gives us someone to hate and someone to focus on. And in doing that, we then can rile up this base of uneducated, cloistered, I almost said closeted, but cloistered, foolish, scared, angry people, and get them to vote our way. And so you have a lot of what Sterling was alluding to and what Skylar was talking about is that, yeah, they're doing this specifically to get this thing in front of other people and to make it so that they're known as, oh, well, we're the ones that hate the same people that you hate. And that, if that's what's driving your politics, you are a piece of shit.
Yep.
There is no nice way to put it, and you should not be in politics. And if you're listening to people who are pieces of shit, you need to come listen to us. I'm happy to take you for coffee. I absolutely will have coffee with anybody. I may not buy your coffee, depends on how you think and how you talk. But I'm happy to go to coffee and have a chat with you about how you should actually meet some people. No, I'm queer, and when I moved back to Montana, it was literally, I met so many people who I had known before because, I went to school with them, but who didn't know that I was queer because I wasn't out when I was here. And them knowing me changed how they treat our community. And it was, I understand why the queers left. Hell, I did it. I absolutely did it. But in leaving rural Montana and rural America, we did ourselves a disservice because we do actually know a bunch of people. And when they know us, when they talk to us, they're far less likely to attack our community because they're like, oh, I know Kevin. He's a rather large, angry homosexual, but I still like him. Not all homosexuals are bad people. And that's the thing. And so we have a lot of, do you know trans people? I can guarantee you every single person out there knows at least one trans person. And if you don't, it's because they're afraid of telling you they're trans because you've done something to make you unsafe for them. So think about that. If you think you don't know any, know that you have actively made yourself unsafe to the trans people in your life. And that's something you have to work on. And come have coffee with me and I will tell you how. I'm happy to help you fix that. Zoe, take it away.
I'll dovetail with the Boogeyman thing and say that, yeah, they want the Boogeyman, years ago with migrant caravans, it was abortion and gun control and queer folks and critical race theory. And yeah, that's to rile the base for votes, but they're also using it, we talked about undercutting public education, like using critical race theory and using trans people as sort of to convince folks to run, far right folks to run for those things so they can get people in office to dismantle those public education systems. I think the DPHHS ruling specifically was twofold. One, you can't just ignore the court order, and the rationale they gave for it was essentially they said, well, we had the way it was and then we put the new way in and got rid of the old way, so now there's nothing to go back to, which that's not how laws work. Go back and do it. It's literally,
that's not how time works.
Yeah, right.
Oh, let me go back 6 minutes. Nope, it's not there. What?
So yeah, and then the second thing is they took a piece of language from the court to and misconstrued it to rationalize their argument. It was an argument in court. The question was, if a trans man has top surgery, a double mastectomy, did that surgery make them a man? And the answer is no. They were a man, and they go through that procedure to affirm their surgery or to affirm their identity. And the court or the DPHHS latched on to them saying, oh, these surgeries don't change sex, therefore you can't ever update your birth certificate. Completely misconstruing the confluence of things that result in sex. But it's going to go back to court. They got smacked down once. They're going to get smacked down again. Idaho last year. If you're trans in America right now, life is hell. And this is just another round. But we'll win it. We'll win this round in the courts, and then we'll elect me, we'll elect Howell, we'll elect tons of queer people, and the fight goes on, and we'll damn well win it.
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think needs to happen with this that people forget is that these are lawyers that are doing this thing, and the courts have an ability that they very rarely use, but that I think they need to start exercising. And that is they need to remove people from the bar that have actively broken their commitment to upholding the law. You can interpret laws several different ways, but when you actually go, no, I'm just going to ignore you. It doesn't matter what you say, and I'm going to throw out years of precedent. I'm going to willfully misunderstand what you're doing, and I'm going to tell you that you are not a co-equal branch of government. No, you're done. You lose your law license. You don't get to practice anymore. You're done. You're done. Because you have actively become a danger to our democracy. And I'm sorry, but that goes all the way up to all of these people that were involved in the January 6th. If you decided that you were going to be involved in this stuff, you're no longer acting inside our democracy. You've decided that you think it should be destroyed. Great, but that means you're no longer a functional part of it. You can't hold office. You can't work in the law. Done. So yes, that makes me a dick.
I thought it made you brilliant.
Well,
Yeah, I was like, does it though? There's also a conversation about the all the Supreme Court judges that are actively against Roe v. Wade right now, and how they played clips when every single one of them was asked the question if they would overturn Roe v. Wade. I think it was Brett Kavanaugh who said, "No, this is settled law as far as I'm concerned." And I was like, so you can also lose.
Said that, and
yep.
Gorsuch,
Gorsuch.
one of them need to be taken in on perjury for lying about that.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
that's
another
thing.
thing.
You can have consequences.
Yes. You can also lose your license for doing that, for lying. And I was like, okay. So that is what I thought you were coming out with, was that same information, but apply it to more.
Here's a funny thing, though. You don't actually have to be a member of the bar to be a member of the Supreme Court. You don't have to be a lawyer. In fact, several justices haven't been, and they've actually been really good justices because they were fair-minded individuals who weren't caught up in the gamesmanship of lawyering. They were more interested in how does the law affect people. And, I think that's a valid thing. I mean, at this point in our history, it'd be really hard to get somebody that wasn't a lawyer approved for the bench at that level. But I honestly think it's something that we should look into, because we need somebody that's fair-minded that looks at the rest of them and goes, that's very clever. No. But yeah, I mean, we have plenty of times, we have plenty of evidence in Montana where people that have become very high positioned attorneys, I won't mention any names, but their initials are Austin Knudsen, Attorney General, and they have done things that should absolutely have them disbarred. And I hope it happens, because that is exactly what it's going to take to get these people back in line. If you want to function inside of our democracy, inside the rules that we play in, you can. And there are plenty of ways to change those rules to be more along the ideology that you want. But if you decide to play outside of those rules, that's fine. But you're no longer playing the game that we're playing, and you're done. Out. So, anybody else? Okay, I've got another one. I've seen a lot of talk about various Democrats' electability in various races for years. Does focusing on electability as a priority allow an Overton window shift to the right, as progressive ideas are increasingly labeled too fringe to win, allowing the GOP to skew even farther to the right to distinguish themselves from the sea of moderate milquetoast Dems? None of them are on this show. Moderate milquetoast.
I strongly dislike the whole idea of play it safe. The whole vote blue no matter who thing. I think that if you don't have a candidate that doesn't resonate with you, that you don't see that is your view and your vision of the future, then don't vote for that person. That is absolutely your right. Don't feel like you have to vote this way. You have to be bullied into this way. But another thing is to attend events like this, talk with these candidates and ask them these questions and see if you can convince them of the right ways, the correct ways. I don't know. I don't really see races as electability. I see, is this the kind of person I would want to represent me? Is this the kind of person that I would like representing, my city, my state, my country? And the answer is yes, then they got my vote. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as it should be.
So
Melissa?
the year was 2000, and Ralph Nader was running, and I was a big fan of Ralph Nader. And not only did he not win or even gain a significant percentage of the vote, he cost us. And we got George Bush for 9/11 instead of an experienced statesman who was a scientist and believed in the horror that our environment was headed towards. So I feel a little burned about third parties. That said, I hate the idea that our choices are limited. I absolutely detest that. And that's one of the reasons why, my little gang here down in Yellowstone are trying different things, that we're trying to rebuild our party from the grassroots up, doing the deep canvassing, building a larger army of volunteers, making plans to keep them active, not just in election years, so that we have candidates who can be progressive, because honestly, we all sort of feel that way. But then they'll be electable too. And, if we get 5 people who are absolutely brilliant in their ideas, then the grassroots needs to be able to decide, which one of them is going to be their best representative this next go around until the next time and the next time. So I kind of feel like there should be a middle ground, and I crave that. Does it?
Okay.
Still mad about Ralph Nader, though.
Well, so I'm going to tie into that because I think it's interesting, because there's 2 parts to this. There is the talk about Democrats' electability in various races for years. It's like, yeah, but that's why we have primaries, so that we can get some interesting people out there. But we need to fill every race in Montana. We have, of the 100 seats that are up in the House, we have 70 Democrats running. That's not enough. We have only 20 running in the Senate. That's not even half. And we have to fill all those races. More importantly, we need to stop thinking that, that's just always going to be a red seat. It's not, unless we decide that we never do anything there. And so we have a lot of, I agree that the Overton window does this weird shift, because we have a bunch of milquetoast. I have to be nice to the center in order to get elected. No, you don't. You have to be loud and in front of people and get your name out there, and so that people see you and understand that you're a viable person, first off. And I'm running as a complete weirdo. Like, I have effectively a beer logo, for God's sake. Come on. I'm not doing this with the whole, I'm the serious candidate, but I am a serious candidate. I am approaching the work of politicking versus policy completely different. The policy work that I want to do is very intense and serious. And that takes somebody who's willing to talk about it. That's why we have these forums, is that we can get a little bit deeper into these discussions, so that people can understand that someone may look milquetoast or someone may look unknown, but you can sit down and have a conversation with them and find out some very interesting things about what they think, how they see things, what they're going to do when they get into office, how they're going to be able to confront the public, because the public's going to confront them. Every single one of us at some point is going to have to deal with somebody who's going to come up and yell at us for our political stance. And bring it. It's going to be fun.
So I want to add, if I can, I just want to add to that. This, like, excuse my French, but how the fuck does the people know what people are looking for? The voters get to decide who's electable. It isn't 4 people sitting in the state office. It isn't the central committees. It's the voters that get to decide who's electable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's almost a slam to the voters.
It very much is.
Yeah.
And it kind of drives me nuts, because I sit, full disclosure, I sit on the board for the state party, so I have a little bit of inside baseball into what goes on. But I have never had a meeting. It's not like we've sat down and gone, okay, let's talk about House District 100. I think Zoe's delightful, but I don't like her this week, so we're going to end her. and bring me the head of the Wookiee. That's not happening. You know,
Well,
that just
That's good.
it would. It'd be great if it would start happening because, you take a look at, compare the ballots in Yellowstone County. My ballot, didn't have county commissioner or any of the county seats. And then I saw on Facebook or someplace a ballot for Kalispell, same thing, no Dems. And it's like, come on, I know y'all are out there, but what are we doing to, and we talked about this the last time, what are we doing to get people to run for office in those positions? And, and it just is kind of like, I know what happened in Yellowstone County. It's kind of like, hey, Carol, you want to run? No. Hey, Carol, you want to run? No. And
how many times must we ask Carol before she'll say yes?
Well,
we got it on a checklist. It's
exactly.
apparently 7. Because the 7th time she replied with, "Fine, I'll fucking run."
That's a very different. I think I kicked the door and it was like, I'm running, try to stop me. But I think the overturn windows shifted. But I do think the conversation of electability, as folks have been talking about, isn't on the voter side necessarily, or it doesn't at least come into effect until polling gets close or something towards the end, and then those questions around third parties and stuff or smaller candidates do get raised. I do think the conversation around electability is often, coming from within the party, specifically within folks in the party who do not want the party's values to be farther left. And I think if you are a leftist like myself, you find that to be incredibly frustrating, and you've found that, whether that's at the federal level and Biden platforming on student loans or God knows what, and then feels like promises made, promises not kept. My heart hurts with that a lot, and watching allies and advocates within the party feel like we played defense forever. No, it's not. But let's try to jump ahead.
We'll get there. Finish your other thought.
My other thought was going to be, so that's coming within the party. I think as a candidate, one, you vote for people who align with you. Two, like the line between, boy, it's really frustrating that there's no person who encapsulates the things I wish government would do, and I'm running for office. That line is razor thin. And if you find yourself wishing that government would do the things, if you're in Montana, congratulations. You're like 2 phone calls and maybe 10 cups of coffee away from having your name on the ballot if you're willing to do the work. And I think that's, if you want to shift the overturn window to the left, you get involved in the places that you can have an impact. That can be your schools, that can be your communities, or if you've got the passion, it can be in the halls of legislative power.
Sterling?
Amen.
A lot of the Overton window stuff gets moved by activists and grassroots community as opposed to necessarily our elected leaders. I think it is important a little bit to focus on electability as far as we want somebody in power who can win. And they're the ones who get to write the laws and decide what happens and stand up to Republicans. I mean, right? I mean, they're probably going to be the ones in charge. As many Democrats as we can have who get elected who can play defense. That's coming as a kind of a downer, but I think the Overton window over time, over decades, has moved left and has brought in new acceptable ideas. I think having those primaries is really helpful. I mean, having a more progressive candidate and more moderate candidate, I think is helpful. It helps those ideas get debated. And I think as we've seen over time, eventually those moderates, those people that we think of as the electable candidates, end up adopting those ideas from the progressive candidates. And I think that's a really effective way that I think even progressive candidates can run and their ideas get taken up, even if they aren't necessarily the one who gets elected ultimately. It's sort of how I see it. So I think there's a lot of value in having as many candidates as possible running because it shapes that debate.
Skylar?
Well, I mean, I think I started, but when it came to like electability, I think it was JFK. They called JFK the unelectable Catholic guy.
Oh, yeah.
Obama, they called President Obama the unelectable black guy. And if you want someone truly electable in these kind of districts, look at Joe Manchin. Look at his electability and the job that he's doing in the Senate. And I mean, yeah, the guy's elected, but what good is he really doing? You know, I just don't. The term electable. If a candidate's running and you like the candidate, vote for the candidate. You know, if you don't like any of the candidates running, go become a candidate. That's what I did.
I remember when Tester ran the first time and nobody thought he was electable either. But here we are.
Sorry, I'm reporting
Well,
something.
I call voter fraud because I didn't think that any of the ones in 2020 were electable, and they're sitting, their asses are up and down.
Yeah. So there was something I wanted to add into this, but it's escaped me because of the person who decided to be racist in the comments. Trolls are so much fun. Yes.
Okay.
So I reported him. It's fine. But yeah, we need to have more stuff. Oh, I know what it was. Of all the places that I've lived, a little history of me. Of all the places that I've lived around the country, the only place that I would move back to is Maine. And they've done something that I think is really interesting is they've started the ranked choice voting, which I think is really, really smart. And we've had some pushback here. We interestingly had some pushback from people that are like, if we had ranked choice voting, we wouldn't have tester. You don't know that. We didn't have ranked choice voting, so you don't know any of that. But ranked choice voting is literally a chance for you to go through and say, of these candidates, what's the order that you think they're worthwhile in? Because that gives us a better candidate overall that more likely reflects the actual electorate and respects what they're going to do going forward. I do think it's interesting that Alaska has joined the ranked choice voting, and we're seeing it expand into, I believe New York has it for certain races now, and we're going to see it expand into some other places. Electing people is a necessary part of democracy, and doing it fairly so that you can have the best candidates, regardless of party, regardless of the mathematics that are involved in how people get to the ballots, is a smart thing to do. And the more that we can remove some of those hurdles to getting fair representation, the better our representation is going to be. So hopefully we will see some of that coming up in the near future. I would like to see that definitely happen. And the other thing that I want to say to everybody is, and this ties into Zoe, you know, the difference between, I don't see myself represented in my representatives and I'm running for office is literally, what side of the bed did you wake up on that morning? Because one of them has you going down and filing. And like, I love all the people that are like, I'm too scared to run. They're going to find out about the dirt in my past. And they don't have the time. And nobody cares. Did you make a mistake? Yes. Did you learn from it? Yes. Move on. If somebody tries to shame you for it, you look at them and go, I'm so glad that you're perfect. Go away. It's not that hard. But all of these people, and I'm getting really tired of the people on Twitter who constantly are going, well, I don't see anybody in this race. It's too bad that the Montana Dems didn't get somebody to run. I see you on Twitter. Why aren't you running? Oh, well, I don't have time. Do you think I have time? I have 2 companies I run. I run Pride. I have a ton of other stuff that I'd like to be doing. I gave up being in a show to do this race. And the show was Matilda. I got to play the greatest villain in the world, and I gave it up for this because this is important. You make the time to do the important things. And if you're going to sit there and complain instead of doing something, I'm going to tell you, you need to go find the person that's running in your nearest House race, your nearest Senate race, your nearest PSC race, and you're going to volunteer all of the time that you see. You're going to take your phone and you're going to look at your social media time for the last 3 weeks. You're going to average it out. And that's how many hours every week going forward you're going to volunteer to make phone calls on the behalf of those campaigns because you didn't run. And then you'll be in the position of, I'm helping somebody else and I've done all this work and I know what it takes. I should just run. Yes, pumpkin, you should. You absolutely should. And we are happy to help you. I will be the person who will call you up and say, I know that making phone calls is a slow torture in a deep boil filled with sharp rocks. You're making phone calls. You're going to do it anyway. I am happy to be the one to tell you that, yeah, people are going to be mean to you and they're going to say horrible, racist, anti-Semitic things and think that they can get away with it because they can't trace them down, and they're wrong. And you're still going to be okay, and you're going to do this, and it's going to work, and you're going to be awesome at it. I'm happy to be the person to tell you. Melissa Smith will tell you. Carol Borner will tell you. Zoe will probably throw a beer at your head and also tell you, yes, you can do this. No, Zoe would never throw a beer. He's a lawyer. We don't know what he'd throw. A fit? It's fine. Skylar, you got to admire Skylar. And I love this because when I found out that Skylar was running, it was right before the M&M, and they're like, do you know anything about him? I'm like, nope, haven't heard a thing about him. He got up on stage, and I looked at him, and I was like, is he old enough to have the position? Because it occurred to me in the middle of his speech that he has to be 25 in order to take the seat. And so I asked, I'm like, not to be rude, I just want to make sure I'm not like IDing you. He's like, yeah, I'll be 25 in time. I'm like, perfect. Great. I don't see a lot of 25-year-olds stepping up and doing this race. And that's pathetic. Here's the thing. I'm going to be 50 in January.
Damn. Sorry.
Right? Exactly. No, I feel exactly the same way. I'm like, I'm going to be half a century old. It'll be fine. Damn you, Cloud. Anyway, but there is literally no reason that people half my age aren't running. In fact, most of them should be, because while I think I've got expertise in the PSC, I shouldn't be running everything. People my age shouldn't be running everything. We need more young people to step in and do more. But if young people aren't stepping up, we're going to do it. And that's where we're at right now. I know that's part of the reason that Carol is running, is because we need somebody running, and there weren't younger people that were stepping up in there, and she waited as long as she could. And then she's like, yep, I'm going to do this. So yeah, there's no reason for that. One last question. This is tying into Zoe. Zoe already answered this. And we'll go around and we'll end with Zoe, because even though she already answered this, I'm sure she's got more feelings. More feelings? Is $10,000 in student debt forgiveness enough? I would say if your student debt was $9,998, it might be. But otherwise, the answer is no. If we can bail out the banks to the tune of $1.7 trillion in the last 2 decades, we can bail out the students to the tune of $1.2 trillion. The fact that we've spent nearly $3 trillion on 4 different airplanes that do not fucking fly, which base level of what a plane is supposed to do, fly. I don't know if you know this. That's the base. Carry weapons, secondary. Be able to go fast, secondary. Actually get off the fucking ground, pretty basic. We spent more than $3 trillion on planes that don't fly. We can absolutely cancel student debt. And for all the people that are like, oh, well, I paid off my debt, and that seems unfair to me, I don't think that we should stop at canceling debt. I think if you paid off your debt, we should maybe go, hey, do you need a 0% loan for the next 20 years so that you can do something interesting because you did pay it off? I'm perfectly fine with that. And that is a very reasonable thing for our government to be doing with its money. Hey, you want to start a business? You need to build a building and you want to put in housing, and you paid off your student debt because you're so great with money. This is my youngest sister, by the way. She's phenomenal with money. She's paid off her student debt. I would turn to her and say, hey, yeah, this is what your student debt was, $126,000, and you paid it off in 11 years instead of 35. God only knows how you did that. She's never been to Nicaragua, so... But, yeah, if she needs a 0% loan for 10 years so she can start a business to do something new and that's going to put back into the economy, and that's because she paid off her debt, absolutely, let's do that. Why not do these interesting things? How is that not something that you want? Who else wants to answer?
So I know that my mom went back for a second career, got her degree in teaching. She taught special ed for 20 years. And when she retired, she owed 3 times still more than what she had actually used to pay for school. So no, $10,000 is not enough unless you go back in time and you forgive all of the interest rate that was accrued over that time from that original $10,000 also. There's no way. In 30 years, that loan should have been able to have been paid off. That's predatory lending. These are not
Absolutely.
deadbeats that we're forgiving money for. They're working and they're paying taxes. And it's our own government who wrote those rules to keep them in their economic class instead of being able to educate and work their way up the system. There you go.
So
Okay.
I absolutely do not believe 10,000 is enough. I don't think if they completely wiped out your debt that would be enough. I think that there is the underlying problem of college right now. Like, we could wipe out everybody's debt right now, say everybody's debt is completely gone. The problem will still amass again. The same exact thing will happen. We need to have federal college for everybody that's free. And when I say free, you pay taxes. We all pay taxes right now. What are our taxes going to, if not to our education, to our healthcare? I don't understand. Why am I paying these bills? We need to take the greed out of education. If we could take all of these BS charges that the colleges are charging people and put that towards teacher pay, we wouldn't have teacher shortages here in Montana anymore. I just think it's an entire deal. It's an entire package. You can't just forgive student debt and then leave it alone and say, oh, we did our job. You have to fix the entire system, or it's just going to come back to exactly where it is now.
Yeah, I agree with Skylar. Like, a lot of the stuff should be dealt with up front. Like, why does anyone have $100,000 in debt in the first place? Like, if they hadn't taken away so much federal money that used to support public education, like, why does anyone have to take up that big of a loan in the first place? And then have that hanging over your head for years and decades. And right up front. I mean, that's really where we should take care of this stuff.
So I'm going to go here. This is maybe dangerous, but I'm going to go here. I am a retired officer in the U.S. Public Health Service, and so I get to go on Malmstrom Air Force Base. And if you know anything about Malmstrom, it is an Air Force base, but you can no longer land planes there. And so we've fought to keep it in Montana, and I don't want to belabor that point, but it's like if we took the amount of money that they have spent on the commissary, they have the phenomenal commissary at Malmstrom. They have wonderful housing. If we took even part of the money that we're, I'm not even saying like half, if we took a quarter of the money that we're putting into our military and put it towards education, we would be leaps and bounds above it. We would be able to wipe out student debt, and we would have a great educational system. But we're spending it foolishly on so many things in the military. The jets that you bring up, Kevin, there's just a plethora of ways that we are wasting money. The infrastructure that we built in Iraq that is not used, that all went into the pockets of Halliburton. It is freaking corruption. Yet our people are struggling because they've got they took out student loans to go to school, and and it's kind of funny. The last thing I want to say is it's kind of funny that that we bailed out the banks, yet it's the banks who are benefiting from the interest of these loans.
Melissa, do you want to?
Did you already go?
I did, kind of.
Oh, okay, sorry.
But also, a question, the $100,000 loans, how much of that actually paid for the school? And how much of that was interest rates? that are just imaginary dollars.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
somebody
exactly.
made up, you know. So, but go on, Zoe.
Yeah, I think the question, do you forgive 10,000? Do you forgive 100%? There was conversations around like retroactively making all like interest zero and paying back whatever was paid in interest. So as Kev was saying, if you have 20,000 of interest, we drop that off. But if you paid off your loans, you get whatever that interest was back. There's a lot of ways to do it. I think, as Carol was talking about, your budgets reflect your priorities, and we have been simultaneously devaluing public education while pitching it to our kids as something they need to do. It is, a necessity for your entry-level internship, probably unpaid, to have a college education of some sorts. And so I think that inherently is going to be burdening the people in your community. It's going to exacerbate the housing crisis. It's all connected. And then you add in, you talk about other intersectionalities about how what communities are more impacted by student loan debt. Turns out it's marginalized communities. And so it's just, I'm glad that the conversation is happening. And it is, I wish it would happen I wish the conversation at the federal level wasn't 10,000 right now, because for folks who are not paying right now because student loans are on hold, 10,000 and restarting, for a lot of them, that would be a slap in the face, because they don't have the money to pay. So.
Well, we've made it an hour. We've actually kind of come full circle because we started out with education and we're ending with education. And here's the thing. I guess I'm going to sum this up for everybody really quick and tell me if I'm wrong, everybody. We need to fund people. We need to fund actual education for them. We need to fund teachers to get them good education. We need to get guns off of streets. We need to get guns out of the hands of children. And we need to make sure that if we're going to waste money, we waste it on things like feeding kids. Which I don't consider a waste. But at this point, I would rather, if DPHHS really is that tied up with paperwork, great, let's pass a rule that if they give money to every single student, they don't have to fill out the paperwork. They're just, every student got free lunches and got lunches through the summer. Great, go for it, do it. Because if that's what it takes to actually educate our kids, and this is something that even Republicans should get, so hold up, because it's a Republican moment. But if our kids are educated better, they're able to do more, which means they'll build more things, which will improve our economy, which will make everything better, which will make everyone happier, and things will be good. And I understand that you think that that's a problem, but that's because you're terrible people. But I'd love to have coffee with you anyway. So I'm going to wrap up the week on that note.
That's that progressivism.
Thanks everybody for joining. What?
I said that's that progressivism. That's what Zoe was talking about, the boogeyman.
Progressivism. Treat people well, and they'll be good.
Yeah, crazy. We don't like that here.
Right. So anyway, thank you everybody for joining me today. I'm going to throw up the overlay so everybody knows that the show is done. Please hang online for a minute, and we'll say goodbye